Central Weekly, a weekly podcast from the Central Podcast Network. You've got episode number 65
Goodness.
of The Weekly. I've got in the room there are three of us, okay? Two of my favorite people in the world, Mr. John Henninger.
Are you the other one?
Yes, I am. We've had a lot of people in this room the last couple of weeks when we've been doing these ministry spotlights, so I'm overwhelmed. My head's spinning still. But hey, we're keeping it simple. We're getting down to our roots. And guess who is also in here?
Please say James McKinzie.
No. Discipleship Pastor James McKinzie.
Hello, everyone.
James, again, this is a great sermon. And again, we're not going to talk just specifically about the sermon. We kind of are, just because it's the topic. But really, it's neat because we originally were going to have, and I think we might have even said this a couple weeks ago, that John was going to be finishing out with this big announcement, and he was going to say, week 6, we're looking at the church, we're going to make some big stuff. But then your sermon topic, generations, really, we decided, let's just put an addition on this house.
Yeah, we're adding a new room.
We're adding a new room.
That's how you said it, wasn't it? Adding a new room. So.
And I'm excited about this because you're the perfect person to talk about the generational, and we'll get into this because
It's just because I'm old.
True. Not because you're old, yes. Not just because you're old. You're older and wiser, and you've seen this in your own family. That's where I'm getting it at.
Well, and I've seen it, the good and the bad in a lot of families too, how this stuff plays out. So, yeah.
I like how our music, you didn't hear it, but just cut out when you said the good and the bad.
Yeah.
But here, let's talk, because I want to chat a little bit about Build This House as a whole, and then we'll get into generations. Because we've got the two of you, and John had to leave early, last week.
I did.
It's okay, though. We all have our kids are in our lives, and we have to drop things when kids need us. But the big announcement last week was 2 areas. We're expanding our footprint, and we're expanding our facilities.
Correct.
The facilities one was... Let's talk about this, because we're now able to chat about this after the service.
Yeah, right.
And I know a lot of people were impacted and surprised, and also like let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, you pumped those rooms up every time, which was really the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, right. I hope that wasn't just me, because that'll fall flat every time. Yeah. I hope that it is, God aligning some hearts with the vision that He's placed, that He's allowed me to have Him to be confirmed by our eldership. For sure. So the big 2 were expanding the facilities, which is we're going to be looking at parking. We're going to be looking at expanding that room and refurbish, just like you said, the housekeeping stuff. Yeah, seats, space, and spots. Ooh, seats, space, and spots. Parking spots.
Good.
And if you really, and the cool thing is, then the footprint, expanding our footprint is, we're going to start the multi-site model, and the very first community is
Carbondale, Illinois. Carbondale.
Carbondale. The Dale. There's lots of names for the Carbondale, but we'll find out more of them probably along the road. And again, it's a time to harvest, and it was really neat that this was an example of the harvest when you talked a lot about reap and sowing, and we're not going to get there yet. So, reap and sowing. So let's talk about this decision, because we have time to digest it. Okay. What was your most exciting thing that you heard last week after the announcement was made, John?
There's been
reactions.
100%. Probably the most exciting thing I heard was from you, Jared.
Oh yeah.
Who, you told me that during the 9:15 service, somebody who had been wrestling with the decision to follow Jesus and be baptized from Carbondale was watching, and this announcement that we're coming to Carbondale was kind of the confirmation that they needed to take that next step, and they're coming here on June 4th to be baptized. Yeah. As you said, it's kind of that first fruit of the ministry that we're walking into in Carbondale. That's by far the best news I heard.
And Corey's her name. Corey was at Connection Night in Carbondale. So this is just like hitting all like what God has been doing the last couple months within Carbondale and within the leadership and making the decision. Corey just like came out of nowhere via text on my phone during the 9:15 service, and it really was neat to see this fruit that we're talking about harvesting. We're talking about these seeds in the ground, and boom, here's one fruit we're picking. That's the thing. Yeah,
we're picking.
Yeah, we're picking.
Yeah,
3 farmers are not. We're not farmers.
Yeah, we're not farmers. But one other neat thing too is we've had a few people come talk to us as well, saying, "Oh, hey, I know like contractors in that area. I know that we can help out this way, and so people are already starting to take ownership of this, which is really a neat thing as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I said it from stage last week, and I mean, this is not me fundraising, but this is me, praying that God will, like I said, we will borrow the money if we need to, because this stuff costs money. I mean, both our in-house housekeeping stuff, the expansion of our facility, but just as much with the expansion of our footprint, because you're talking about buildings and just everything that comes along with that, and so even just in the last couple of days, people will say, hey, I want to be part of that financially or whatever. And so I'm praying that we won't have to borrow a dime, that God is going to provide in a way, and maybe through borrowing and lending, maybe that's how it'll get done. But I'm praying that the resources will come in a way that more than funds what God has called us to do.
And I'll say this, being an outsider in the fact that I didn't write the sermon and I haven't been in those rooms with leaderships and that, making that decision it really was a sermon. And it really was a service. This was not a sales pitch. This was not even a kickoff of a campaign.
Yeah.
I didn't think it felt that way.
Good.
It felt like more of a church service / like tent revival. Because really, I didn't like that it really. I did like that it wasn't super schmoozy. Like, okay, and we didn't have everything. And like you said, we didn't have schmoozy. That's the word I used.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions that we don't have answered. So instead of like, hey, we're going to tell you what God's been leading us to, but we don't have everything ready yet. Like we didn't have a PowerPoint presentation with the 5 points that are going to lead us this, or here's a glossy flyer that you can take on your way with you, or here's the website to go to get all the details. Like, do you get what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah, I talked to some people this last weekend who had been part of a capital campaign in another church. And
there's nothing wrong with those.
No, for sure not. I mean, as a matter of fact, it's a necessary thing to do as you...
And you're going to hear more about it.
...fund ministry. But, they were part of something where kind of the vision was presented, a card was handed, and they were asked to fill it out right then and there on the spot. And everybody's got to do their own thing different ways, but hopefully in this way, there can just kind of be some organic buy-in to this.
Exactly.
I mean, like, again, I've said this to other people, I'm not looking for you to buy anything, but I'm praying for you to buy in to the vision that God has given and confirmed time after time. And so if he's in it, then the funding will be there and the personnel resources will be there, even when we don't see it on this end.
Yeah. And we're going to hear more about it coming closer. It's like you'll keep filling us in on updates and stuff.
Yeah, there will be a time when you're like, yeah, I get it. I mean, we will talk about this.
And here's your build this house update
ad nauseum.
But that's what's exciting, keeping people clued in to what God is doing, and not like, okay, now we signed this thing and now we're doing this, but
right,
keeping them going so they know this is they're part of it.
And really, that's the big thing. I mean, with this being a campus and not some autonomous church that we're planning somewhere else, I mean, we will always talk about each other. We'll talk about Carbondale and we'll talk about whatever the next campus is and the one after that and the one after that, because the goal would not be that we are these separate ministries, but that we are all one church in these different locations. And so, of course, acknowledging each other, constantly is a necessary part of that. Right, James?
You want me to talk now?
Hey, buddy.
You two have been monopolizing all this time, and I've been just sitting over here waiting to get in, but no, you guys keep going. So
well, I brought you in by saying, right, James?
Right,
like that.
James. Oh, so that's my cue.
That's what a good co-host does.
Right.
Yeah. No, and I think, too, the other part
what I'm saying is... No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I think the other part that I was getting ready to say something nice about you. The other part that people don't see is your heart behind this thing, because I have seen that all along from the moment you called me into your office and said, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking," and just all the prayer and all the research and just everything that went into it, and this has not been a snap decision by any stretch.
For sure.
It has been a long time coming, and really it was only made because this is exactly where we felt God leading us to go. And and a lot of people on the same page feeling the exact same thing. So,
and I got to say, I was really proud of our elders because I think that there is. I don't want to say I was concerned, but like, I mean, you could make a case for, hey, let's address our in-house stuff. Yeah. Let's take care of the home front first.
That makes more sense.
And then down the line, a year and a half, 2 years down the road, whatever it is, then we'll look at this multi-site stuff. But to their credit, legitimate prayer, legitimate fasting, brought them to the place where, okay, we're going to confirm this vision. I mean, this is indeed the direction that God has for this congregation in this season. Though it is more costly, though it is a higher risk, this is definitely what God has called us to.
And the addition this week was generations. And that's really why we're doing all of this, is for those future generations to say, hey, I remember I was 11 years old when we first started and we changed and we made, a multi-campus strategy approach, and look where we're at now. And that's really why we're doing things for the future generations. And I love that your lesson this weekend, James, you mentioned the addition. It was full of mementos, and this is the generation that, because we talked about it. It's like, it's an addition, yes, but it's also like, and you were talking about getting things ready and people moving out getting the home ready for the future generation. But I was kind of like, well, we don't really move out of the home. We just add an addition, and like that's a Western cultural thing. In the Eastern, different cultures, you continue to add additions because the main family gets bigger. And I'm gonna let you talk in just a second. You specifically have seen this physically with your houses and your own generation lines.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter Bria lives in the house that I grew up in. So, which is kind of a neat thing. And yeah, I mean, I think the hope here, I think this is a fitting message following up what you said last week, just simply because for 170 years, generations have been impacted here in Mount Vernon. And the hope is this is the start of the exact same thing over in Carbondale, and who knows what the next site may be. So,
yeah. So whose room, Debria and Fran, whose room is their room?
Diego's.
That's a weird question.
Wait, what?
Oh, wait. Diego is in my room. I'm sorry.
Cool.
Bria and Fran is in my mom and dad's room.
Oh. And then and then if you go down to what do they call your homestead area where you live and Ethan?
Oh,
and
Johnsonville?
Johnsonville, because that's the other side of the family. That's
Leanne's
Leanne's family.
Leanne's side. Yeah. And I actually share a driveway with my mother-in-law, and then Ethan and Gina are on the other side.
That's so cool.
I
love that.
Of the road. So, yeah.
And Ethan, they built their house.
Correct.
How long ago was that? Maybe 4 or 5 years now?
I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember how. A few years ago.
And they lived in what first?
They lived right across there. There was another house there that was a house that Leanne grew up in.
Yeah.
So.
And so this is really neat because, I mean, when I first thought this is a perfect sermon for James to preach, because I was thinking of the spiritual generations, that you are reaping the sowing, right, that you put into praying for future spouses for your daughters, and that's always inspired Marie and I about how we pray for our future kids and their spouses, and I see that it's really neat. The reason it's funny that I brought this up, because we're going to be taking new staff photos, and if you look on our website, our staff photos have our families behind them, and so we've got James, we've got Fran, and we have Ethan on staff, and so those are basically we're going to after we take those photos for the staff, we're just going to gather all of you up, all 3 families, and just take one big family photo.
Yeah, we're doing a family photo. Yeah.
So not only are we seeing the spiritual heritage of the generations that have been prayed into, the physical, literally, of the houses.
Yeah.
How did you pray? How did you pray for spouses for your girls?
So same way I do. And now every morning I pray for my grandkids the same way, and I pray. My prayer is that they grow up being, first of all, that they grow up being leaders for God, and second of all, that they will find spouses who will lead them closer to Jesus rather than further away.
Because honestly, you inspired me to start praying. I mean, like seeing the results of your prayers with the husbands for your daughters. I mean, those are some of the greatest guys that I know.
Yeah.
And so seeing the results of your prayers has made me start praying daily for the husbands of my girls.
Yeah.
And I pray that they would be genuinely godly men who love God, who love my daughters, who love family, and who love the church.
Yeah.
Those are the 4 areas that I pray.
I do have to say, I'm looking real forward to you guys' daughters starting to date.
What?
That'd be a lot
Why
of
is
fun. Well, because you guys have kind of given me a rough time every once in a while, and so you know what? It's going to be fun watching this all unfold and see how you guys react as dads when your daughters start dating. It's not the easiest of times.
When did boyfriends come in the picture for you? Not for you. That's for your girls.
Not for you. Yeah.
I don't know.
Like what? Middle school or high school? And did you give parameters on them? Like you can't like have a boyfriend until you're 15.
No. I mean, I don't think we did. It just, I mean, we were
just trusted.
Just, what came along we would deal with, So, yeah.
We're just gonna deal with. I like that.
So, yeah.
Let's get back to the sermon.
Yeah,
okay, shall we?
do.
Because
Yes.
in honor of all of this and all of this just sappy talk, you gave a rated R sermon illustrations from the Bible. Your words.
I didn't know. I still don't know if I need to say that, but
I think
it doesn't hurt.
I truly think that in today's world, R is probably a heavy rating for that. I mean, you're talking about.
That's what I told you.
Yeah.
PG-13.
PG?
I mean, maybe PG-13, maybe.
Okay.
And there's a difference between reading it and like putting up
do
a
I need to
visual
even
aid.
say it? Kind of thing. So
And don't say it if you don't want to say it.
I don't know.
But basically, the sermon. Let me. If people haven't heard the sermon, because they're probably like, "What are they talking about?"
Yeah.
Basically, your illustrations that you gave from the life of David, and David had some R-rated stuff and sins that he went through, and then his sons went through, and you just laid them out there right on the screen. That sounds bad too.
Well, I did
the words on the words of the Bible on the screen.
I didn't actually put those on the screen.
Oh, you didn't? Nope. Yeah, as much as I was paying attention.
I said not to do that, but yeah. So, but yeah, you're right. There were a couple of. I mean, it kind of started with, David and Bathsheba, and then
Just go ahead, say it again.
What?
It's
No.
the best joke.
It is. Listen,
My
it
forehead
is
is resting
it's
on
so
my.
so good.
Everyone, haven't you thought that before?
I don't know that I have thought of. No, I don't know that I
You have not thought about the coincidence of David seeing Bathsheba taking a bath.
Right.
So just my thought always went to, if she was taking a shower, she'd be Shower Sheba.
That's a tough thing to say.
And there's the Queen of Sheba. So, yeah, I don't know.
Exactly, James. Exactly.
Exactly. I'm not sure what that. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying the Bible doesn't always. It's telling it how it is. It's not gonna. Hey, I'm gonna make up this name so it sounds better because the David's sons are prime examples of this. It's confusing.
Well, that's true. Yeah, and I think though, that we know the sin that David committed with Bathsheba, and then, I mean, it plays out. God tells him it's going to play out in your family, and it does in a big time way. I mean, his family ends up being a mess. There's a lot of bad things that go on there, from one son killing another son, and then what happened with Tamar, and it's just a bad situation with the family. And I think the whole reason I wanted to do this message, I just think too often we don't realize, or maybe we just don't give it consideration, the impact and the influence of what we do now, how that plays out in our families and our kids, and I think we tend to think, what, we either don't think at all, or we don't really think it's going to have any impact on our family. And, again, because I'm old, I've seen so much of this play out in families, how it just passes on. So
what was that point that you made about that? It reminded me of a quote from your family sermon about what did you say about what you do in your family now?
Oh, I know.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, what happens in your house now affects what will happen in their house then.
Yeah, and James, like you said, I mean, you made those points to say the choices we make impact those generations,
right?
And like you said, if you're you're bringing your family and you're making a point to bringing them once a month or maybe just around the holidays, the next generation isn't going to make it a priority at all if you just continue to do that. And you also said, we're not talking about you talk about that a little bit about the generational curse and about how we receive the sins of the father, but not really. Talk about that because you wanted to explain.
Well, I mean,
that
because
it's
in the Ten Commandments, Exodus 20, and it talks about how that the sins of the parents would be placed on the children for the third and fourth generation, and I say that that doesn't mean that God's going to punish me for the sins that my mom and dad committed, but it sure does mean that my parents will kind of point and guide me down a path of life based off of the choices and the decisions that they've made, and that can and then the other point you're talking about, and we kind of talked about this. If you look closer at the farming piece of this planting and harvesting or sowing and reaping, the idea is that you plant, for every one seed I plant, it produces many seeds. I plant one kernel.
Yep.
It produces many kernels of corn. It's that's really the whole point behind farming. And I think oftentimes the lesson from that is, and I've seen it, and I'm sure you guys have too, that what a parent sows is often multiplied in their kids. And so it's not just they mimic our behavior, it's they take it another level. And so, as you mentioned, the example that I gave is if we make church a low priority, oftentimes you see the kids make it no priority. So
yeah, and that was all of this talk about nature and nurture kind of stuff that you learn about in psychology or whatever. That was a big fear of mine, and I think Maria too, getting into foster care, just because we didn't know what we were going to be walking into. And again, I want to preference this with my sins are something I have to fight against, and I know that those are things that can go about on my generational line too. But those bloodlines that have come in that are not of your own, you don't know what parents and grandparents and birth parents and then you're bringing those children into your home.
Right.
And again, it's a balance. There's definitely nature and there's definitely nurture. And our prayer is that our naturing in the image of God overreacts and can counter a lot of those nature things that our kids have seen, or if they're older, or they just have in them those. Because again, I think there are generational curse lines that come especially if you're dealing with witchcraft in past or curses in the past, those can carry on into generational lines, and that's us as Christians, we're to battle against that. But I think what you said, it needed to be said. It's not a 1-and-1. Like, okay, my grandfather did this, now I'm paying for it. That's not how we're taught.
That just is not consistent with Scripture. But yeah, and I think the turning point in this whole sermon, and I mean, the background needed to be shared, but the turning point for me in the sermon is when we talk about Mount of Olives, and because it's the whole, and I didn't necessarily intend it to be this way, but it kind of.
This was my favorite part.
Yeah, a lot of this sermon, it feels like it's pretty harsh or negative. Beating people up, so I don't mean for it to sound that way, but it kind of lays the groundwork for. I just saw how David walked up when he finally got to about his lowest point. It says that he walked up Mount of Olives, and I'm not sure why even the author of 2 Samuel even gave that detail, but it says he walked up Mount of Olives, and he was just weeping, and he was like head covered, feet bare, just as a sign of mourning. I mean, he was absolutely at his lowest point. But it's interesting then, Jesus, right before he is crucified, the night before he's crucified, takes that exact same path up Mount of Olives. Yeah. And so the picture that it should paint in our mind is this, we walk our steps completely defeated and broken, and Jesus walks those same steps and meets us there and gives us hope.
Yeah.
And so no matter like what the past has done to us or our families, what we do is we realize that through Jesus, that's the turning point for us, and he meets us there at our lowest point and gives us hope, and then we pass that on to our families from this point forward.
And that's why the relationship with Jesus is so important. I mean, he is the only thing that can really change what has happened in our past. And just I did reference back to Tamar, and I kept thinking about, like, she didn't deserve that. She went through that, and she had a brother-in-law, right, that did that to her. Am I right?
Half-brother.
Half-brother.
Thank you.
It was a half-brother.
And then a father that we don't really know, but he didn't come
it
to her
doesn't say
aid.
No. I mean, she went to live with her brother, so her full brother. So it's like,
and I just kept thinking about her, but yet we have the ability of full restoration and full hope because of what Jesus did.
Yeah.
And I even back to the Mount of Olives, it was neat because that's where they say that he will appear first when Jesus comes back and reclaims earth and takes us into heaven. And just to think about that, like that same spot. And I think about that too, just because Maria will physically be there in June, going to Israel. That's one. I think she said that's the place I'm most excited about going is Mount of Olives. So, and is there a reason you're not using the article "the" in most of the ways that you said the Mount of Olives? Is that a conscious decision?
No.
Oh, I was just curious because I just used it right now. I use both Mount of Olives and the Mount of Olives, and I was just like, I wonder if if there's a reason.
No, there's no reason for it other than talk like I'm from Southern Illinois. Probably, I don't know.
Well, I was like, maybe he knows something I don't know. But I love two that you, and maybe the favorite part B of the sermon for me was your second main thing was it's less about trying harder and more about growing closer. Because I could see that thing where people are talking about this and they're maybe frustrated because they've tried to switch generational things. They've tried to do this. They've done that, but and they keep falling on their face. But it's like you said, it's about growing closer.
It really is. I have talked to so many people who have been doing some things probably shouldn't be doing, and then their solution is, hey, I'm going to do better. It's really same reason why like New Year's resolutions last about a month is because it's all about, hey, I'm going to try harder kind of thing. And trying harder, being better, doing better it just seems to fall flat a lot of times because it's all on our own strength. But if you focus your attention on moving closer to a relationship with Jesus, somehow what I have found is stuff just spills over into your family then. And that would, I mean, whenever I talk to people, that's my exact, that's the direction that I give them is, things are not going the right way for them. How's your relationship with Jesus? And that's, not to oversimplify, but that's it. So.
And here's your full circle moment. What your specific prayer for your daughters and for their future spouses was what?
I know I feel like I'm supposed to know this, but what do you want me to say?
That their future spouse brings them closer to Jesus.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And it's not, hey, he's got to have this job, he's got to have this income, they need to be this successful in this life, they need to have started 4 churches by the time they're 40 and do it. No, it's that they draw them closer to Jesus.
That's it. I have never. I don't know that I have ever prayed for my daughters to be like financially successful, for them to be, I mean, obviously would want them to be happy, but but the prayers have really always been about growing closer to Jesus and being around people and marrying people who would lead them in that direction.
Yep.
So
super cool. Yeah.
that
Good job,
stuff is
James.
the way it.
Good job, James.
I think I say this every time. Your heart shone through, and we all love it.
It's true, we do.
That
Well,
other preacher, he's just hard nails. And
I love both of you guys. I noticed how you slow played that cinnamon disc too, by the way.
we heard this.
You kind of you opened it first and just let it sit there.
Yeah,
You're
it's food is a real temptation of mine, and so I'm trying to exercise control over this cinnamon disc that you brought in and distributed so freely, and so I did open it and I set it on my computer. And then later, after exercising self-control, I placed it in my mouth and
But you
enjoyed
but you
the
chewed
cinnamon
it up.
disc. Yeah. Well, it's like the owl with the Tootsie Pop. You know, I mean, like how many lick.
5. It's funny with my kids. I see the same. I'll give them suckers, and Quincy will have it done in 10 seconds. He'll chomp, 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 done. Ty Lynn just licks it and just savors it. Yeah, I'm not very disciplined. I can't keep that very long. My father-in-law, he can do like an 8-hour trip, and he's gonna say, "I'm gonna eat one candy bar," and every hour he'll at like on the hour he'll take a bite.
Wow.
Sounds like something
That's
you
discipline.
would do, James.
Well, no, that's not me. No, no. As Jared sits over there and hadn't even opened his.
Well, I couldn't help but notice that. Yeah.
I'll get to it. Let's talk about what's coming up next. Episode 66 of the Central Weekly is next week, and we're going to start here at the Central Family a brand new, and we're basically...
You said this was 67.
No,
right
this is
now.
65 right now.
Oh, great.
Remember, right?
Perfect. I don't know.
You said 65 earlier.
Okay,
Well,
good.
so
And
you're
I'm-
right. I'm wrong.
And so trust me on this, because I'm a math major. 66 comes after 65.
Okay. All right.
They
So,
taught
Jared,
me
my
that at
apologies to
SIU.
you.
And
I had 67 in my head.
here in the Central Family, we're kicking off our Central Summer, which is always a lot of fun. And it's always, and I say a lot of fun because it's always a lot of fun to bring new people in.
Yeah, right. So the month of July, for the last couple of years and for the going forward, is kind of an opportunity for us to hear some voices from the stage that we don't hear a ton. And so in July, we're going to do our short summer series, which will feature who else preaching that series, Jared?
I don't know.
You're one of those voices.
Jared is.
I'll kick things off.
But
you're getting ahead of us. You're getting ahead of
It's
us.
just going to be great. All right, so we back it up. We're going into a series called Boats.
Boats. Let's talk about the boats.
You know, here's the thing. This is just the kind of the way that all this stuff plays out. But originally, when I had talked about the title for the series Boats, it was I was going to do something based on a true story. That's what Boats was going to stand for. But it's just kind of one of those like, let's just go with the boats. You know, let's go with the actual vessels. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at.
Well, can't you do boats based on a true story about boats?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it gets
Boats
a little,
about boats on boats.
I don't know if it gets a little off, but regardless, we're going to look at just some of the boat moments in the Bible and learn some life lessons from them.
And I'm excited because the easy ones are Noah. I think he built a boat, and
He did.
Jonah.
Yeah,
But
Jonah.
I'm excited about you're going to talk about Paul and the shipwreck,
Right.
Probably, and then Jesus and his disciples. I'm assuming that's going to be walking on the water,
Right.
getting out of the boat. I'm excited about that.
The disciples, of course, that is. There's a couple different angles there.
Mm-hmm.
One of those, of course, is going to be calming the storm.
Mm-hmm.
One of those will probably be throw the net on the other side of the boat.
You're tired of fishing the same way, the same time, and not getting anything. Jesus comes and he gives you a new way.
Sometimes he gives you, and it doesn't make any sense to you.
Yeah.
So anyways, go ahead.
There's some
excited about
powerful
that.
lessons
Boats
there.
on boats. That's what I'm just going to call it. But and here's the thing. This needs to be stated. John, you're a boat guy,
I am a boat guy,
but you're boatless. You don't have one right now.
right.
But you hope to. You would love to have another
I would
boat.
love for this summer to be the entrance,
Maybe
the re-entrance of my family into the boat community.
Maybe you can buy one for the series as a tax write-off. I'm just kidding.
Hey, are boat shoes out of style now?
Okay, let's talk about this. I still have one. I've been wearing them less. You don't wear yours at all anymore.
Let's talk about when we say boat shoes. Are we talking about like Sperry's, like that kind of a thing? I rarely wear those only because mine are just not very comfortable. And I don't have the right socks for them.
Yeah. See, I'm a big proponent of if you're gonna wear them, you don't wear socks.
Okay,
but and those little like girly little socks, I have had a couple pair of those in my past. No, I feel very feminine.
This is the struggle for me because like I too. I mean,
you go with the stink. You own it.
But mine are hot.
Yeah,
and so anyways.
I will start wearing mine again in the summertime.
I think you should wear them.
My dad wore them all the time. He was a trendsetter.
You need to wear them as you preach.
All right, let's do it. This petition. Yeah. We're going to start one. But then kind of back to me. We'll be preaching July. We're going to start our short summer series.
Okay, let's talk about me.
And we're going to be looking at summer school and lessons that we've learned. We're still kind of keying into that, but I'm excited because you're going to be part of it again. And this is a chance really to give Jon a break and to let him explore other areas of the church and probably sit in on a couple of other areas and just get a breather. And then we're going to have Trevor and Mr. Hayden Paninsky.
Yes, we've got a lot of stuff like Carbondale Wise that we'll be looking at during that month. But yeah, I'm excited to hear these other voices.
It's going to be a good summer.
In that summer series.
Hayden did such a good job last year too. Man, that was so good when he did that short summer series. That was so good. Don't you think?
Yes.
I don't know why I said that other than he's on my team and I just love him. So
yeah.
Well, with that encouragement, let's wrap this up, gentlemen. Thanks a lot, James, for sitting in. Thanks a lot for a great lesson. And next week we'll see Jon back in. We're going to talk about the boats.
Yep.
I feel like we need a boat horn. There you go. And we'll see you next week. Bye.